Hey guys, so I just wanted to do a quick video. Something came to mind tonight. I have been talking to some of my followers in the last couple of days. You know, this time of year is always a little bit difficult. I think it's the holiday season. We just got over Christmas and whatever else everybody celebrates. Today is January 4th, so we just successfully got over the hump of New Year's Eve into the New Year, which can also be sort of mentally taxing and draining. And one of the things that has been coming up in a lot of our discussions is the topic of accountability and credibility. And, you know, credibility, I think, is its own entity, which is a whole different discussion and something that I think is something that I do want to dive in another video all on its own. But just as a quick aside, I do sort of want to get into a quick little blip about just accountability and the idea of mental health as it relates to our physical health or our chronic health, sort of when dealing with our medical conditions and sort of staying strong and fighting through and going through our daily struggles. A lot of people ask me, as an almost 33-year-old, how I get through my day to day, how I continue to fight, how I push through. And one of the things that I always say is that I think that I'm given a lot of undue credit because I am somebody that was born with my chronic illness, Blau syndrome. I will be 33 in a few weeks. And I was born with my autoimmune disease, so I don't have anything to compare it to. And I think that people that were diagnosed later in life, or at least later than after birth, they have experienced a loss. They had something prior to the moment that they have now, which is something less than what they experienced before now. And with all of that being said, I think it can be difficult. And one of those particular times in life that I know I experienced as being more difficult, even as somebody that had already sort of come to acceptance because I didn't really have a period of loss. I, was always sick. For me, the harder years, I think, and sort of coping with being a chronically ill person was in my late teens and I would say early to mid 20s. Those years were particularly difficult for me because, those are the years when, everything's about dating and hanging out with friends and doing cool things and, trying to dress cute and going out and drinking and trying new things and whatever else and being social in general. And I think it's sort of hard to strike a balance between doing all of that and then also managing your health. One of my followers, a really sweet follower, reached out to me the other day, and I'll obviously protect her anonymity. She reached out to me sort of for some guidance because she had been struggling. She had said, I'm not really sure what to do. I need some guidance. She's been taking some similar medications that I've been taking, not for the same condition that I have. My disease is super strange and rare. But we share some similar medications. And a lot of people come to me for, some basic advice on, hey, I don't know if this is working anymore. Am I building up a resistance to the drug? Am I building up antibodies? Is my body rejecting it? Am I building up a tolerance? Am I allergic to the drug? Like, what can I do, Becky? How can I sort of navigate through this? And, what should I do when I go to my next infusion? How should I talk to the doctor? What is happening to my body? And anyway, to make a long story short, after sort of having this conversation with this individual, we come to find out that this person's extracurricular activities may or may not be the reason why this person's condition or conditions is or are flaring. It might not be at all. It might be that the person is actually building up antibodies or is allergic to the medication in question. But at the end of the day, we really don't know because, like I said, the extracurricular activities, whether that means, not getting enough sleep or going out and partying or drinking or not eating right or whatever else, is definitely not, it's adding to the equation in a way that is sort of muddying it up a little bit. And, unfortunately, the general tone in the conversation that I was having with this poor person was basically this feeling of defeat, that's not a word, defeat and discouragement. And it flashed me back to this situation that I had when I was in my early to mid 20s. I've mentioned on here, and I've mentioned on Chronic Motivation on Instagram and in a lot of my live chats, I've mentioned that, I went away to college, and I went away 5 hours away from home. I moved out when I was 18 years old. I was like, get me out of here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be independent. I'm going to show everybody that doesn't believe that I can do this on my own. And I moved away. And, it was the best thing that I ever did, but it didn't come with its trials and its issues. And one of the issues that I faced was obviously managing my care. And the location that I chose to move to was upstate New York, which was the middle of nowhere. And the access to medicine that I had up there was garbage. The best medical care that I had was like maybe an hour and a half away from the college that I ended up going to, and even that medical care wasn't so great. So then it sort of became this situation in my late teens, early 20s when I was going through college and ultimately living upstate New York, of just basically finding doctors or rheumatologists that would basically, in a sense, be my drug dealers. And by drug dealers, I mean prescribing me prednisone. Because for the first 25, 26 years of my life, really 28 years until I was prescribed Remicade, prednisone was really the only thing that I was prescribed on a regular basis. From the time I was 18 months old, I have been and still am on prednisone. No other medication has addressed Blau syndrome in a way that Remicade has. And without prednisone, I can't walk, I can't breathe, and I can't see. So obviously, throughout my existence, whether I've had rheumatologists that have been able to manage my care in a way that I felt confident about or not, at the end of the day, I know that when I wake up in the morning or before I go to bed at night, really, I need to take prednisone or I won't be able to walk, breathe, or see. So, flash forward, like I said, to, my college years, and I am basically just trying to stay afloat and manage my day to day and go to college. And then I moved back down to the New York City area, and I'm still going through the motions of shitty rheumatologists and not really finding anybody that I feel like was really listening to me. My weight was fluctuating, as prednisone does to you. And I was really good about being on top of self-medicating with prednisone because it was the only thing that was helping me function. But as a girl that was in my early 20s, my health wasn't necessarily being managed in an overall way by anybody. I was just basically finding any primary care doctor or any rheumatologist that would see me every few months to refill the prednisone prescription, and then I would be on my way. And then what ended up happening was, I decided that I was going to put myself out there, and I contacted a rheumatologist that I had seen in my, I would say, mid to late teens. I started seeing this doctor out on Long Island when I grew up on Long Island. He was the doctor that I was also seeing when I was coming home from college breaks. So I saw him through the time that I was about maybe 19 or 20 years old until I ended up permanently moving upstate after I graduated college. So after a few years of living up there, I ended up moving back down here. It had been a few years since I had seen him. I figured he was the last rheumatologist that I respected in this area. He had moved offices. I made an appointment to go see him. And maybe it was presumptuous of me, but I made a new patient appointment to go see the guy, and he didn't remember me at all. And, as someone that has such a rare situation, I totally understand that doctors have a lot of patience. Patience, Patients, not IENCE. I understand that there are a lot of people that come in and out of their practice every day, so I'm not trying to say, don't feel like I should necessarily be like at the top of their list as far as like standing out on their minds. However, I always felt like I was like such a unique and a rare case that it always struck me as weird anytime I had to sort of reintroduce myself to any doctor, let alone a doctor that had managed my care for more than a short period of time. And this doctor had managed my care for easily 3 or 4 years. So, I go to see this doctor, and now, again, like you guys all can relate to this. This wasn't a situation of like, oh, I'm just going to drive to the doctor and like walk in and sit down and wait 5 minutes and, hey, you remember me? Great, give you a hug and a kiss and like, let's move on and like talk about my treatment plan. This was, of course, driving out. I live in New York City, so driving a backwards commute out to Long Island, going to see this guy after work one night, sitting in an hour of traffic in the wrong direction, waiting in his waiting room for however long, getting into the exam room, and then my balloon immediately being deflated because, of course, I'm thinking I'm doing the right thing, being all pumped because, like, very rarely at that age did I feel like I was doing the right thing. I was, like, moving around a lot and taking a lot of risks, and they were good for me, but I was still taking a lot of risks. And I thought I was doing the responsible thing by going back to a doctor that I had already been established with in the past. And then to have, like I said, that balloon immediately deflated because when the doctor walked into the exam room, he didn't remember me at all. And I had to sit there and sort of re-explain my whole medical past, which was really unfortunate because he owned a good piece of it. And he wanted me to really start from scratch. And I had a bad experience with him when I was in college. He had prescribed Humira for me. I was on it for 11 months. I ended up getting really horrible migraines on the drug. It was right after Humira actually had just come out to the market, if that doesn't date me. There wasn't a ton of literature out about the drug. I knew my body. I knew I had never gotten a migraine in my life. I stopped the drug on my own, and the migraines went away. He really shamed me for it and, basically called me an irresponsible patient. And that was at the time. I gave him another chance. Again, went back to him, thought I was doing the right thing. And it really just didn't sit right to me that he didn't remember me and that we were going to be starting from scratch. And I felt so super overwhelmed by the idea and the notion that I was going to have to be doing all of these tests and this workup and whatever else, that I remember. Now it's probably like whatever it was, 7 o'clock at night. It was like winter and gross out, and I like felt like shit, and I was probably like 20 or 30 pounds overweight, and just frustrated and irritated and all of those things. And I remember leaving the office and calling, my then boyfriend, who I ended up marrying and now I'm divorced to, and calling him and saying, like, order some Chinese food. I don't even care if it makes me feel like shit, because I, basically, rationalized the crap out of the situation and justified it away. And basically said, order us some Chinese food because I have a roof over my head and a great boyfriend, and, I'm going to come home and be grateful for the things that I do have, and I don't care if this asshole doctor isn't one of them. And I neglected my health after that for a couple of years because I was so discouraged by the situation. And when I say neglected my health, I didn't go on a bender or anything. But what I'm trying to say is that it becomes really easy, I think, to sort of detach from what the right thing is sometimes, and to sort of mentally not be strong enough or not be able enough or capable of putting ourselves in the best position to be able to manage our physical health sometimes when our mental health is not where it should be.